Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB bikini pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and today we will be speaking with a competitor who earned her pro card after only doing 2 shows. And she was a gymnast for years, and then she pursued cosmetology. She then found that her heart was passionate about something else, and that was the gym. So she used her love for the lifestyle and became a pro bodybuilder with the help of her boyfriend as her coach. And now she serves Orange County as a trainer and a posing coach. Today we have Tara Grier. How are you?
I am amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, of course. It's great to have you on, and I'm excited to hear your perspective on a question that I ask everyone, or at least whatever goes on in your head, and that is, what is the one mantra, belief, ritual, or just thought that goes through your mind right before you step on stage?
So right before I step on stage, I am dancing the entire time. I can't help it. I'm feeling the music. I'm getting in the groove. I'm just letting out all my nerves. I'm just kind of going over my posing routine in my head and just dancing it out. I don't ever want to think too much, because if I put too much pressure on myself, then when I get on stage, I end up doing silly stuff. And being under pressure for me, I just can't handle pressure very well. I've learned that through being a gymnast and being on stage as a dancer. So I just try not to overthink at all. So I just kind of dance it out, and it works for me. So
That's awesome. I love that you know yourself well enough to know, like, yep, I got to relieve the pressure and just do my thing. So what are some of those weird things that have happened on stage that came from pressure, or things that have allowed you to realize that you don't do well under pressure?
So actually at my pro debut at Legends this year, I had decided to change my front pose, and I wasn't really practicing that much, and I wasn't really imagining it in my head like I always usually do. But right before I went on stage, I was kind of like, oh my gosh, like I'm about to do this new front pose. And I went on stage and I just did this extremely weird thing with my arm, and it looked just, I'm not sure, just kind of retarded almost. It looked like, I looked like a figure competitor. I was like pointing my finger, and my arm was super wide out, and it was just a silly mistake when I was just kind of overthinking it almost. I wasn't my natural self on stage. I wasn't bringing that like stage presence that I brought to get my pro card, and it just didn't work out. And my critique at the end was that my posing wasn't on point. So I know that now, like, overthinking it was just too much for me. So yeah.
Wow. And had you not been dancing backstage before that?
Not as much, because honestly, since it was my pro debut, I was dancing backstage, and I felt like the other pros were kind of like, what is she doing? Like, I feel like they might have thought that I wasn't taking it seriously, just because it is so serious, but that's really not me.
Yeah.
So I kind of was dancing, but then I kind of was like holding back, just because I was like, I don't really know if this is like okay. Like, I didn't want to distract them either, because it was a pro show, so I felt like I was being like too much. But now I know that they don't care. They want to have fun too, and now that I know that I've done a couple pro shows, that they just want me to be myself too.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah,
I
so
love that.
I just always try to be myself now at shows, and I think that they like that. So
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm so glad that you came to that realization for yourself. I can only imagine what it's like to be backstage with all the pros for
yeah,
the first time, after following them or watching them compete for so long, and then you're like, oh, I earned my spot here. Like, this is where I am now. And then finding that comfort zone of like, what makes you feel best before you step on stage. So to everybody listening, I actually got to watch Tara compete at that show, and after that, I started like seeing her on a few of the girls on my team's story, and I was like, okay, like what's going on? Like she's a posing coach as well. And then they actually recommended, like a few girls were like, it'd be awesome to have her on your podcast. So I wanted to bring you on. And the reason why they said that it would be interesting to have you on was because you achieved something big very quickly, and you're not on any teams, and you've done it yourself. Now, I personally believe like no one has to be on a team to be successful. You're an obvious proof of that. However, you did mention that you have your boyfriend as a coach, so I'm interested to know more about that and that dynamic.
so having my boyfriend as my coach is there's so many cons, but there's also mostly pros.
Mm.
The pros being that we live together. So every single morning is my check-ins, pretty much. I don't have to send pictures. I'm here in the raw. He can feel me. He can see me. He can see how I am, like changing every single day. Um, he can see me in my emotional states. You know what I mean? So he can be there for me as a boyfriend and as a coach.
Mm.
But it is kind of tough sometimes to balance for him just being my coach and my boyfriend at the same time. Like sometimes I want him to be my boyfriend and I want to have his shoulder to cry on when I'm just being crazy emotional. But sometimes he kind of is like still like in the coach mindset and he's like, no, you're complaining
Mm-hmm.
or like, but I'm really just wanting to vent to him for the short period of time. You know what I mean? But it's it's definitely a roller coaster for sure having my boyfriend as my coach, but I honestly love it and I wouldn't want it any other way. Like
Oh.
I trust him with everything, and it's cool to be him come to every show with me and tell me exactly what to do and he's great with it. I mean, he's been competing for the past 5 years, so he really knows a lot about this sport.
Mm.
And I think that's why we've done so well together, just because, I mean, he's been in it for so long. So he's given me so much advice about being backstage and just telling me all the little details that I would have never known.
Mm.
I love it. And I mean, we have done two competitions together now. And
That's cool.
it's pretty tough, but I mean, the reason why I decided to compete was to understand what he went through.
Wow.
I had been with him for a little while and he did two competitions or maybe just one. He was prepping anyway. So I just kind of wanted to understand what he went through. I saw him prepping. I was with him when we were working out every day, doing cardio, and I was like, I looked up to him. He was inspiring to me. So it inspired me to do a show, and I grasped that kind of like mentality of competing. And once I got first at Patriots, my first show, he was doing USA's. So I was like, you know what? I might as well do it with you.
Mm.
So competing together, it's pretty tough just because we both want to be in the spotlight. It's both of our days.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of have to like learn how to balance that. But it's nice to be with somebody that goes through the same exact thing. So then you can really understand each other and be able to communicate about it and not being like, why are you so tired right now? Or why aren't we going out right now? But we both just want to sit at home together and and be lazy when we're
Yeah.
practicing. So yeah, it's nice having him as my coach.
That's awesome. I love that. And I like that you went into the fact that he was your coach because he inspired you and you got into competing because you saw him competing and his journey begin as well. And I think that's really cool. And I'm curious to know if you ever considered joining a team. I know you said that like you wouldn't have it any other way, but in the beginning were you kind of like doubtful, or did you not know enough? Was it like ignorance is bliss? Like, what was that like when you started seeing all that?
Well, I think that at first I just I just trusted him, and I trusted his judgment and everything, and I just wanted it to be me and him as a team. But then when I competed and I saw all the teams and how all the girls would like get together and have their meetings, and it was just kind of like a team thing. I was like, oh, that would be nice to be able to just sit with a bunch of girls in the check-ins and go over like funny stories that we've had through our prep. And I thought, oh, maybe that'd be cool. But after going through these shows, I learned that I can make friends with anybody
Mm-hmm.
and be on a huge team of girls with that, you know what I mean? So at first, I kind of was like, maybe I should just be on a team just so I can have that unity. And I mean, it is nice that on social media, the teams will post the pictures of the girls, and then the shows and the judges will see that all the time. They're like, oh, she's on Team Edge. All right, I'm going to notice her on the stage. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, maybe that'll be good. But I just think now having him as my coach is just right for us right now. Maybe down the road, just I think maybe as a pro, being on a team would be good. But right now, I think it's all good.
That's awesome. Yeah, like you said, like the main thing that I've learned, at least from being on a team and I'm on Team Edge, is like it's really just about the camaraderie. And to be quite honest, like I don't think that the judges actually can recognize us from what we look like on social
Right.
media. And so, like you're a perfect example that you don't have to be on a team to be very successful. And the opposite is true as well. You can be on a team and be very successful for the work that you put in, regardless of anything else. Like it's like what happens on stage is what happens on stage, and you're going to be rewarded for that, or you're going to be critiqued and given feedback. And I think that's something really cool about the sport also, is that when you're backstage you can make friends. Like we've had girls like come up to us in our groups, like no one, it's everyone's family back there because we all understand, we relate, like we don't want anyone to feel lonely. So I think it's cool that you're sharing from your perspective as well, that it's like you still make friends and have fun back there. And yeah, I really like that. And when you did your first local show, aside from the fact that your boyfriend was going to go and compete in USA's, what made you feel like you were ready to go for it and step on the national stage?
So my prep for Patriots, my first local show, I only did a 7-week prep. But the entire prep, I was extremely, extremely strict with myself. I made sure that I ate all my meals, I did all my cardio, I didn't have anything that I wasn't supposed to have. And going into nationals, I thought, I did my prep for Patriots so well that there is no reason why I couldn't be ready for nationals. I mean, my mom and my little brother were actually visiting for my first show, and it's crazy because I took like a whole week off before nationals.
Wow.
We went to the Grand Canyon. I was eating pizza. I was eating whatever I wanted for like an entire week, not training or anything. And then I just decided like 3 weeks before nationals that I was going to compete. But because because of my genetics and my body responds so quickly to everything, we were just like, let's get right back into it. I was super fresh already, I'd only had done a 7 week prep for Patriots, so my body was still fresh and I had the little break, so I had the mental clarity to get right back into prep. And I had emailed one of the judges from Patriots, and I was like, do you think I'd be ready for nationals? And she was like, absolutely, like go
Wow.
for it. Like you're ready to go already. Just go for it. So I had a lot of confidence from the judges and my boyfriend and other friends and family. So I just had the confidence and just went for it. And I'm so happy I did, because I wouldn't have known when I would have competed again. So, because the show was in Vegas and we were living in Vegas at the time, so it was perfect. We didn't have to spend money on traveling or anything, and it just everything fell into place.
That is so cool. It really did for you. And I'm so happy for you. It's like you obviously put in the work that needed to be done to earn that, regardless of, like, I think some people hear stories like this and go like, oh, well, I worked for X amount of time and I'm still not there. Like, that's not fair. But it's like, it doesn't matter how long. Like, everyone's journey, everyone's story, everyone's like path is so different. And if we can just honor our own paths and honor our own time frame, that's what's going to allow us to actually succeed at the pace and at the proper timing, I guess you could say. And
Yeah.
then, like, recognizing other people's success allows us to also align more to that success as well. And I think it's really cool that you found a love in this sport, and now your heart has totally taken you into it. And when you were competing, what were you doing for work at the time? Or I guess
So
not when you were competing, but when you started.
yes, so I was actually a gymnastics coach at Brown's Gymnastics in Las Vegas. I did the recreational classes, and then I also started coaching the team. Um, so that was pretty challenging when I first started prep, because I had never done a prep before. I was used to eating whatever I wanted, and then went into that, and coaching 4 to like 17-year-old kids was pretty tough, because I had two boys classes back to
Oh
back,
gosh.
and they were crazy, like running around, jumping in the pit. Like I'd have to be chasing them and like yelling out their names. And meanwhile, I have like prep brain.
Right.
I am literally delirious, and I just after a couple weeks, I just I just stood there and just waited until they came back, because I was going to be wasting useless energy on chasing them around when they were just going to do it anyways. So I just let them have fun.
I love it.
And then when I had to start drinking the 2 gallons of water,
Oh
I
god.
had to tell the kids, like, okay, stay right here. I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'll be back in a second. Don't move. Because I was
Yes.
in the bathroom like every 5 minutes, and I would
Mhm.
have a class for an hour. So I had to make them stand like right by the bathroom so they wouldn't go anywhere. It was funny. Like, Miss Tara, hey, and we're like, I had to go to the bathroom.
That's so awesome. I love that. That's so relatable as well. Like the
Yeah.
whole having to go to the bathroom all the time. I was um before recently left my job before when I was working in what I would be teaching like a group session. Oh my gosh, like they understood obviously, but there were some moments where had like my gallons with me and I was like, I can't do this. Like it's so challenging. There were
Yeah.
times also where I was like so weak I couldn't even open the door practically because
Oh
like
my gosh. Yes.
depletion, you're just like tired. That was from doing a back to back though, so that's also why. But
Oh, yeah.
when you were deciding to do this, what was the reaction that you got from people? And then even beyond that, what was the reaction you got when you came back and you're like, I'm a professional bodybuilder? Like, that's amazing.
Well, when I first told my mom that I was going to start competing, she kind of like didn't say anything.
Oh yeah.
Because I mean, she knew what Ashley was going through, and I knew that she knew I could do it just because I was a competitive gymnast my entire life. But I just feel like people were kind of like, maybe maybe like envious of me because I was going to be doing it, because a lot of my friends and family are in Maryland. So over there, it's big, but in Maryland, it's not really a big thing.
Mm.
So people back at home were like, "What is that? Like, you're gonna be like, is it like a pageant?" Or like they were all like super confused. But I just kind of like also was low key about it. I
Yeah.
wasn't really telling that many people, but yeah, all my friends back at home, they were happy for me, and they knew that Ashley was doing it, so they were like, "Oh, that's cool. You guys can do it together now." But a lot of people were just kind of confused. They didn't know what it was. um, yeah, but then when I got my pro card, people were really happy for me. They knew that I had put in a lot of time and effort being a gymnast. So all my friends back at home, they understood that this was the route for me. So
That's so cool.
yeah.
You mentioned a few times that like prior to competing you just like were able to eat whatever you wanted. Now that you've begun competing, have you noticed a shift where you can't do that anymore, or does your body still respond okay when you have different things, or has your lifestyle just shifted?
Well, my metabolism is just crazy. I can eat whatever and I'm still tiny. But I mean now I'm in an improvement season, so I'm still eating 6 times a day, but I'll usually have something like every day, whether it be frozen yogurt or In and Out or something like that. Like that's not in my diet. I'll usually have something every day, and I look even better. So because my last show, Governor's Cup, my critique was that I came in too lean. So now we're trying to figure out my body to get me fuller. So now in this improvement season, we're going to try to feed me more and see how that responds for me. Just because, I mean, not eating enough for me is not good. I need to
Right.
need to have a lot of carbs.
Yeah, to build up
Yay!
muscle.
I'm
And
so excited
I
that I
wouldn't
hit 4
complain about that.
now. It's awesome.
I know, I'm sure it is. I'm like well, by the time this episode releases, it probably won't be this way, but while this is being recorded, I'm like 8 weeks out and like I'm still eating so much food and I'm eating way more than I was in this time last year when I was prepping for like my first show since 2015. Like I'm
Mhm.
just eating so much more because like you start to learn your body, your coach learns your body, you develop like a healthier metabolism, or your body is just like has so much more muscle, it's just burning through the energy that you're intaking, and it becomes so much more easy because you become used to it and it's just like a
Mhm.
daily habit. It's a habit and a choice, and I think it's great that you can recognize those things about your body, because I think some girls get caught up in what they think they're supposed to do as a bodybuilder. Like, oh, well, I'm supposed to just have these 6 meals and call it a day. It's even if it's my improvement season. And they might be too hard on themselves and miss out on the potential to learn more about their body. And then there's the girls who are like, well, I'll just follow this and not ask questions, or I'll try this. But it's like, when you use like the experiments and you get to know your body better, you can actually become a better competitor, right? I mean,
Exactly.
I'm sure your boyfriend has like a very trained eye to those things as well, where he can
Mhm.
go, yeah, that didn't help you, or he can go like, yeah,
He's
that's
very
actually
good at that.
something we can use later.
Yeah, he's super, super good at seeing how my body responds to things. Like sometimes I don't even understand, but he's like, nope, yep, that was good. I can see. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, I mean, I've only competed 5 times now, and yes, I'm a professional, but part of me still doesn't feel like a professional, if you get what I'm saying. Just because I haven't done that many shows, and I only did one show before I became pro. So when I became pro, I was like I'm honestly still shocked, like that it happened so fast for me. Like when I was backstage with the girls that all won first place and we're waiting for the overall battle, some of the girls that I was talking to were like, "This is your second show? Like what?" And I'm like, "I know. Like I know. I have no idea what's going on right now. Like this is crazy." And I still feel that way.
Wow. Yeah, you've done more shows as a pro than you have as an amateur.
Yeah, I know, right? It's crazy, man. I love it. It's an awesome feeling to already be this like elite, and
Yes.
you know what I mean. But I feel like the years of gymnastics, I was a gymnast for like my entire life, so that really sets me apart. I feel just with
Yeah, your condition.
yeah the form of my body and the structure of it is I feel is right for this sport. So
Yeah, absolutely. And it's clear that there's also like an athlete's mentality that's carried over as well. And you can't necessarily become the best if you're not willing to step into that mentality.
yeah.
And you obviously did that very quickly. Like, okay, this is the plan. This is my coach. I'm going to do it. Just probably the same way you did it in gymnastics. So, going from being an amateur to a pro so quickly, what did you notice or do you notice sets apart the amateurs from the pros, both in physique as well as in stage presentation?
So I definitely think the biggest thing would be the stage presentation. Just because our routines are so long, I feel like we know that we need to practice. I feel like with the amateurs, I feel like they, a lot of the times it's some of their first shows, so they focus so much energy on the training and the dieting, and then they're like, oh, the posing, oh, I'll do it when I get on stage. But that is probably the worst way to look at it, because posing should be like your third priority. It should be training, eating, posing, and it should be in that order. Because I feel like you should train, you should eat your post workout meal, and then pose for a half an hour, just like that. Because if you don't get in that routine, then you're gonna get on stage and look in the headlights.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Especially if you don't have a background in dance or anything like that. I mean, walking in the heels is tough, but
Yeah.
posing and walking in the heels together combined, it's super tough. Even for me. I mean, my first, because I did one posing session. That was it for Patriots, and I still watch the videos and I crack myself up because it was pretty bad. And even though I've had many years of training in gymnastics and dance, it was still tough for me to learn the bodybuilding posing, you
Mhm.
know? So I practiced so much before Patriots and USA's. I practiced every single day for a half an hour. And it helped me be so natural and calm on stage. So whoever's listening to this, if you don't practice posing, practice your posing, like right now, because it's the biggest deal ever. I've been to a couple of shows and I watch the girls and the guys, and when the girls walk on stage and they don't look confident, as a judge, I'd be like, oh, she hasn't practiced anything, and I'd be like, next.
Mhm.
I mean, honestly, like, anyways, back to the question. I definitely see a big difference in physiques for sure. I mean, when I was an amateur, I wasn't looking at any other amateurs. I was looking at all the pros because that's who that's what your goals want to be, is a pro, So looking at the amateurs to the pros, I definitely see a more like a harder look, but still the soft lines that comes with maturity. I definitely see full glutes now in the pros, fuller shoulders, um, and with the amateurs, your body is still getting used to just the training too. I feel like the maturity is isn't there. So yeah, I definitely see a difference in the physiques. Um,
Yeah.
Tough to go up against that. It's definitely tough. So when you earn your pro card, you earned it.
Yeah, exactly. And I was talking to someone the other day about how I'm not competing in a national show yet because I just know like I want to get a few more under my belt. I need to develop my physique more. I want to get more feedback. There's like a specific strategy I'm employing to like make sure that I can achieve what I want to achieve. And it's like, I also think if I were to go backstage at a national show, we have to remember that these are girls who are about to earn their pro card.
Yeah,
So they're not just like the people that are going to win, they're going to win their pro card. Like that's a big deal. That means that they're in a whole new league. It's right. It's like the major league. So
100%.
yeah, it's important to recognize. And also it's like a value thing, right? If we
Yeah,
can truly like value and appreciate what that title represents, like the dedication, the inspiration, the daily commitment, like it goes so much beyond like this card or league. So it's really cool that you can see also within the physiques and the posing is very different. There's just another level, and I think that's why there's always going to be an amateur league and a pro league, because you want to have something to aspire to, and you also want to have something to continue to work to. And once your work is just begun, guess what? You're in the pro leagues and you got to get to work again. And
yeah,
I think that's really awesome. And I love that I feel like you're very like humble about it, in the sense that you obviously like earn your pro card quickly. You earned it. You definitely earned it. And now you're like, all right, like let's show up and let's make things happen. And you're taking your seasons very seriously. And I think that's great. So I'd love to know, like, just kind of closing this out, what's one piece of advice that you would give to someone who's considering competing, or someone who is currently competing and is looking to go pro?
so my biggest piece of advice is to not make any excuses. Um, I feel like this is a sport that it's very, very, very easy to make excuses. You can make an excuse, oh, my coach this, my coach that, or this or that, and there's no room to make excuses. You're not going to ever grow. You're not going to ever feel fulfillment in yourself if you keep making excuses. And also, if you're not doing it for yourself, then there's no point. I feel like I've talked to a lot of girls and they have all these different reasons to compete, and I'm like, are you doing it for your boyfriend or are you doing it for yourself? And they're like, I don't. And I'm like, okay, so you gotta really, really, really think about why you're doing this, because if you're not doing it for yourself, then you're not going to have any kind of like motivation, I feel like. Because I feel your biggest motivation is yourself. My biggest motivation is myself. I will tell you right now, I literally look at my Instagram all night long because I find inspiration for myself. I don't like looking at other girls for inspiration because they're not me and I don't want to be like them. You know what I mean? I want to be myself, and I've I feel like I've come a long way, because before I used to not be, I was confident in myself, but not always there. Now I feel a lot more confident in myself, and that's probably my biggest motivation. So yeah, my advice is to never make excuses and to always do this for yourself.
Wow, I love that. That's really awesome. And your insights behind each of those pieces of advice are very valuable. And I'm very grateful that you shared them, and I appreciate you sharing them. And I'd love for everybody else to be able to do the same thing and say thank you, and also just let you know how much that they got out of this episode. And say thank you, of course, for coming on and sharing your story. So, can you let them know where they can find you, get in contact with you, just touch base with you?
So my Instagram is at tara.brin. And then I also am a new trainer at the Huntington Beach Equinox.
Awesome. Cool. So that's all going to be on the show notes page. So to everybody listening, make sure you subscribe, rate, and review so you never miss an episode. And then, of course, visit www.celestial.fit/podcast to check out all the show notes and, of course, connect with Tara even further. Tara, it's been so amazing having you on. I loved connecting with you, and I'm looking forward to seeing your journey as a pro.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. To everybody listening, hope you have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you are in the world. Just make it awesome.